The water in the basin had not warmed. January 7th, 1907. Hoboken. A fourth-floor walk-up on Washington Street. A widow in her 70s bent at the porcelain, washed 2 black stockings, wrung them, draped them over the radiator. The radiator was cold. The oatmeal pot on top of it was cold. She had eaten the oatmeal cold, standing. Her name was Henrietta Howland Robinson Green. The financial press called her the richest woman in America. That morning, on a desk in Manhattan, a clerk was writing her a check for $1.5 million in interest. New York City had borrowed from her in November. The city was paying. She turned a stocking on the radiator, adjusted the angle, made sure the heel caught the air. Now move forward 119 years, to you, to this chair, to the small, specific pressure under the 3rd button of your shirt that started somewhere around 58 and has not left. You did the things. You worked. You did not spend stupidly. You saved. You watched the rate. You called the broker. You checked the balance at 6:47 in the morning before the coffee was hot, and the number was fine, and the pressure under the 3rd button was still there. The number does not move it. A raise does not move it. A bonus does not move it. The retirement account crossing the line you set for it at 34 does not move it, because what is running inside your chest at 6:47 was not installed by money. It was installed before you could read. In 2002, in a small office in Topeka, Kansas, a 30-year-old financial planner named Brad Klontz was looking at his own hands. He had lost his savings in the dot-com crash. Money he had been told was his, by people whose job it was to know. The hands on the desk were the hands of a man with a doctorate in clinical psychology and a CFP license, and they were shaking on the laminate. He pressed them flat. They kept shaking under the pressure. He had 2 questions in him that morning, and they were not the questions a financial planner is supposed to have. 1. Why did I, of all people, behave like that? 2. Why is no one in this profession asking that? Klontz spent the next 4 years interviewing people about money, not their balance sheets, their stories, the kitchen conversations. The thing a grandmother said once at a table in 1962 that the grandchild was still doing in a brokerage account in 1998. He stopped describing financial behavior with the language of his industry. He started describing it with the language of trauma. The phrase he settled on was 3 words: money scripts, unconscious beliefs about money, installed early, repeated without inspection, governing a life. The kind of belief a person does not know they are running. The kind of belief that hires lawyers to defend itself in arguments the person believes they are having about something else. Klontz and his team mapped 4 categories. They are not personality types. They are weather systems that move across a single life depending on the room. Money avoidance. The conviction, somewhere underneath, that wanting money is corrupt, that having it is dangerous, that anyone who has more is suspect, and anyone who has less is purer. The avoidant pays the bills late without knowing the lateness is on purpose, refuses raises with a smile, donates the surprise inheritance to a cause within 90 days. They sleep better with the account close to 0. They cannot tell you why. Money worship. The belief that the next number will be the number that fixes the chest. More buys peace. More buys safety. More buys the version of the marriage you watched on television in 1978. The worshipper makes the next move and the chest does not unclench, so the worshipper concludes the number was not large enough yet. Money status. The conviction that what you have is what you are. Visible at the car, visible at the watch, visible at the school the children attend. The status carrier knows the price of every object in a room within 15%. They walk into a friend's house, and the appraisal happens before the coat is off. They do not call it appraisal. They do not call it anything. Money vigilance. The constant orientation toward the leak, toward the line item, toward the small expense that proves the larger system is failing. The vigilant keeps the spreadsheet. The vigilant is praised by family as the responsible one. The vigilant tightens the jaw at the cost of milk. and lies awake at 3:14 in the morning with the account fine and the chest not. In the data, the average adult does not carry one of these. The average adult carries between 50 and 200 of them, layered, contradictory, switching on and off, depending on which room you walked into and who was in it. You can hold money avoidance about your own desires and money status about your children's school in the same hour. You can refuse the raise on Tuesday and worship the next number on Thursday. The scripts do not know about each other. That is the point. They were installed before language. They run in the basement. And the basement does not answer a balance sheet. You can put 6 figures in the account and the basement does not check the balance. The basement checks the room. The basement checks the temperature of the kitchen at 6 in the evening in 1971. Clontz spent the next decade in that basement, in a session room in Topeka, in a building that smelled of old carpet and new coffee. On a winter afternoon whose year does not matter yet, a couple sat across from him, married 31 years, 2 children grown, the daughter a pediatrician in Denver, the son running a small construction company in Wichita, mortgage paid, both retirement accounts where the planner had told them they should be. 7 figures in the joint account. They had not stopped arguing about money. They had argued about it on a honeymoon in 1973 in the same words. They had argued about it in 1986 with a newborn in a car seat in the next room, in the same words. They had argued about it that morning, in the kitchen, with the coffee going cold on the counter, in the same words. He thought she did not understand how close they were to losing it. She thought he did not understand they had not been close to losing it for 28 years. Both of them were tired. Both of them believed they were right. Neither one of them was talking about the joint account. Clontz watched them for 40 minutes. Then he did something his colleagues did not do. He asked them to stop talking to each other. He asked the husband to close his eyes. He asked him to describe a kitchen table, not the one in their house, the one before. The husband, eyes closed, breath uneven, started talking. A kitchen on Locust Street in Akron, Ohio. Yellow linoleum. A wall clock with a rooster on the face. Spring of 1974. He was 11. His father had owned a small machine shop on the south side of Akron. In June of 1973, 2 of his largest contracts cancelled within 9 days. By August, the doors were closed. By September, his father had stopped speaking at dinner. By Christmas, he had stopped putting on shoes in the morning. The boy watched his father not eat the eggs his mother kept making. He made himself a promise that spring. He said it again, in the session room, 30-some years later. I will never be a man at a table. His wife was looking at her hands. Clontz asked her what she had heard. She started to answer and stopped. The thing that came out was not a sentence. It was a smell. Damp tin in the back of her grandmother's pantry in Council Bluffs. Her mother carrying the habit forward into a basement in Omaha. Folgers cans of cash, buried in the dirt of the crawl space, 3 or 4 times a year, from when she was 7 until she was 19. Her mother never explained. The cans were the explanation. The wife said, in the present tense, "My mother is in our spreadsheet." Clontz did not interpret. The argument they had been having for 31 years had never been between the 2 of them. It had been between a boy in Akron in 1974 and a girl in Omaha in 1976. The 7 figures in their joint account had nothing to do with it. The 7 figures had never had anything to do with it. Stop. Feel where the breath went in your chest just then. The argument you had with your spouse last Thursday about the credit card. The 45 minutes of static on a Sunday morning over a number that is objectively fine. You were not in that argument. A boy was. A girl was. Whoever taught you what money meant before you had a word for the word money was. You have been paying their bill, in your chest, with interest, for 50 years. One thing, before this goes further. In the comments, name the room. The kitchen, the porch, the car on the way home from the bank, the dinner table where the air changed, the earliest one you can remember where something about money came in and did not leave. One sentence, no story, just the room. because the next 40 minutes are going to walk you back into that room. And the version of you who walks out is not going to be the careful saver you came in as. He is going to be older than that, and quieter. In the year 50-something of the Common Era, in a port city on the western coast of what is now Turkey, an aging man dictated a letter to a young protege named Timothy. The city was Ephesus. The man was a tent maker from Tarsus who had taken the name Paul. The letter was short, practical, full of housekeeping. Among its lines was a sentence that, 1600 years later, would become the single most weaponized clause about money in the Western world. You have heard it quoted, at your wedding maybe, at your father's funeral maybe, from a pulpit maybe, from a stranger on the internet, almost certainly. The love of money is the root of all evil. It is, in the original Greek, not what the sentence says. The Greek word Paul used was philargyria, literally philos plus argyrion, friendship with silver. In Greek, philosophical and Hellenistic Jewish usage of the 1st century, the word carried a specific clinical sense, not a wide appreciation for money. The tight grip, the closed hand, the refusal to let coin move through a person and out into the world. The person who has eaten the silver piece and now will not pass it. Paul did not write that money was the root of evil. Paul did not write that the love of money was the root of evil. Paul wrote that this specific clutching, this philargyria, was a root of many evils. The English translation everyone now quotes came in 1611. The translators of the King James Bible made 2 decisions at the desk in Westminster that have cost the people in your bloodline 4 centuries of usable agency. They wrote, "the root," where Paul had written, "a root." They wrote, "all evil," where Paul had written, "all the evils." A clinical word for one specific pathology became a sweeping moral indictment of money itself. The diagnosis of a closed hand became a verdict on the silver in the hand. And every viewer in this audience who has felt for 40 years a low-grade shame about wanting more, a quiet suspicion that the desire itself was the problem, a small flinch every time the bank balance went up, has been carrying a typo from the 17th century, repeated in pulpits, internalized in childhood, fused with the family's silences, installed in the chest below the 3rd button. The Greek did not say desire was the disease. The Greek said the closed hand was. Paul knew Ephesus. He had lived there for 3 years. He had walked its main avenue every day. And the main avenue of Ephesus, in the 1st century, ran past a particular building, the Temple of Artemis. The Temple of Artemis was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it was not only a temple, it was, in the most literal sense the word allows, a bank. Archaeologists have found the inscriptions. Merchants from across the Mediterranean deposited gold, silver, and grain in the chambers of the goddess. The temple charged interest. The temple lent. The colonnaded entrance where the transactions were arranged had a name the locals used without irony, the portico of the bankers. Paul wrote his letter to Timothy in a city where the largest physical structure in the skyline was a religious building that was also a financial institution, where the holy and the commercial shared the same marble, where you could not separate worship from balance sheet because they were under the same roof. Paul was not writing against money. Paul was writing against what happens to a soul when the soul becomes a closed hand. There is no record of him objecting to the temple bank. Hetty Green was born in New Bedford, Massachusetts on November 21, 1834, into a household that did not separate worship from balance sheet either. The Howlands were Quakers, whaling money, 3 generations deep by the time she arrived. The household ran on a simple architecture. The inner light spoke to every soul, including a child's, and one of the things the inner light asked of a soul was the responsible stewardship of property. Stewardship was a spiritual practice. The two were not in tension. Her mother, Abby, was sick most of Hetty's childhood. She would be dead before Hetty turned 30. Hetty was raised, functionally, by her father, Edward Mott Robinson, her grandfather, Gideon Howland Jr., and an aunt named Sylvia Ann Howland. They were busy people. The whaling firm did not run itself. By the time Hetty was 6, she could read the financial pages of the Boston papers aloud. Her father required it. He would sit in his chair after dinner and have her work through the columns while he kept his eyes closed and listened. She would say, 60 years on, in her own words, "I was taught from the time I was 6 years old that I would have to look after my property." Stop on that sentence. Read it once more, slowly. A 6-year-old child being taught that the survival of her property was her own personal responsibility, not the family's, not God's, hers, at 6, before her permanent teeth had come in. What that does to a nervous system is not abstract. The body of a 6-year-old learns what the body of a 6-year-old can learn. Property is a thing that can be lost. The loss is on you. The vigilance must never stop, because the vigilance is what is keeping the property alive. Hetty's nervous system learned this lesson with the thoroughness of any animal trained early. The lesson was correct. The lesson would also, 80 years later, have her washing her own stockings in unwarmed water in a 4th-floor walk-up in Hoboken, while New York City wrote her a check for $1.5 million. In 1865, Sylvia Ann Howland died. Sylvia was Hetty's aunt. Sylvia was unmarried, sick, frail for the last decade of her life, and Sylvia had been one of the 3 adults who had raised Hetty in the New Bedford house. Sylvia was rich. When Sylvia died, the published will divided her estate among charities and Howland cousins. Hetty was 30. Hetty produced a second document, a second will, one that, she claimed, Sylvia had executed privately, promising her everything. The signature on the second will became, by 1867, the most analyzed piece of handwriting in 19th century American jurisprudence. A Harvard mathematician was hired by the opposing side. His name was Benjamin Pierce. He examined the loops, the angles, the pressure points of Sylvia's signature on the second will, and on 42 known examples of Sylvia's handwriting from the prior decade. He found 30 downstrokes that coincided too precisely to be independent. He calculated odds that came out, in his own arithmetic, to roughly 1 in 2.5 sextillion. The probability of independent authorship was, in Pierce's mathematics, essentially 0. This was one of the earliest uses of statistical analysis as legal evidence in the United States. The court did not formally rule on the forgery. It ruled instead on a procedural ground that voided the second will. Hetty lost. She kept her father's inheritance, which was substantial. She lost the rest of what she felt was hers. She would, for the next 48 years of her life, never set foot in a bank she did not personally audit. She would never sign a financial document she did not personally read 3 times. She would never trust a lawyer's interpretation of a clause without independently verifying it against the statute books at the New York Public Library. The lesson she had been taught at 6 was confirmed at 30. Property is a thing that can be lost. The vigilance must never stop. In 1867, between losing the lawsuit and refusing to lose it again, Hetty married a man named Edward Henry Green. Edward was 46. Hetty was 33. Edward had made his own small fortune in the China trade, traveling silk and tea between Manila and New York. Edward was a gentleman. Edward was charming. Edward was, in the way of a certain kind of 19th century American man, a bit of a speculator. Hetty drafted the prenuptial agreement herself. The agreement separated their fortunes completely. His was his, hers was hers. The marriage created no joint property, no community of assets, no future claim of either spouse on the other's account. They had 2 children together, a boy in 1868, a girl in 1871. The financial walls between them did not move. 18 years into the marriage, in 1885, the walls did their job. John J. Cisco & Son was a brokerage firm on Wall Street, in a building of brown stone and brass plates and the smell of cigar smoke that, in the 1880s, was the smell of American capital. It was where Hetty kept her main account. It was also where her husband, Edward, had been quietly losing his own fortune for several years on margin trades. By the fall of 1885, Edward owed the firm approximately $700,000. Hetty's assets at the firm were approximately $26 million. When the firm began to fail in November of that year, its principals sent her a written notice. They were holding her assets as collateral against her husband's debt. They had not, the letter implied, decided yet whether they would release them. She had not signed for the collateralization. She arrived at the offices the morning after the letter came. She was 51 years old. She was wearing the black dress she had been wearing in some form since her father died. The one with the small repair under the left arm where the seam had given way the previous winter, and she had stitched back herself rather than pay a seamstress. She walked past the clerk at the door without speaking, past 2 secretaries, into the office of the senior partner. She demanded her assets. The firm refused. She did not argue. She left, walked 4 blocks to the office of a notary public she had used before, retained him for the day, walked back, hired a freight wagon from a teamster on Pine Street, and returned to John J. Cisco & Son with the notary, the teamster, and a clerk she had borrowed from a Pinkerton agent who owed her a favor. She stood in the lobby of John J. Cisco & Son for 6 hours. The firm's officers convened in a back room trying to decide whether the woman in the black dress could be made to leave. They considered calling the police. They considered an injunction. They considered offering her a private settlement. They concluded that any of these moves would end on the front page of the New York Sun the next morning. She could not be made to leave. She would not. By the end of the day, she walked out with $26 million worth of securities, bonds, and certified checks loaded into the freight wagon. She paid the teamster in cash, in coins, from a small leather purse. She gave the notary a check. John J. Cisco & Son was bankrupt within the week. Edward Henry Green was, by Hetty's reading of the prenup and her own moral arithmetic, finished. They never formally divorced. They simply never lived in the same building again. He went to a hotel in Midtown. He died there 16 years later with the bill paid by her, posted by mail on the 1st of every month, without comment. She moved across the river. Hoboken, New Jersey, in the 1890s, was a working-class river town. The ferry to Manhattan ran every 15 minutes. The rent was a fraction of New York's. Hoboken charged no state income tax. New York charged Hetty income tax only if she could be proven to reside in New York. She could not be proven. She moved between apartments, a boarding house on Madison Street, a flat on Washington Street, a room above a stationer's. She used different names for postal purposes. Mrs. Dewey, Mrs. Howland, sometimes just initials. She wore the black dress through 3 decades, mending it herself, eating cold oatmeal, standing at radiators that had not been turned on, in winters that were not gentle. The richest woman in America. The press called her, in the New York papers of the period, the Witch of Wall Street. The phrase ran above caricatures of her in the daily editions. Children in Hoboken were said to cross the street when they saw her coming. She did not respond. She managed her own portfolio every morning. She lent to railroads, to municipalities, to churches that needed bridge financing, to the city of New York itself, repeatedly across 2 decades, on terms she set and collateral she audited. When the bank panic of 1907 hit in October of that year, and the city of New York could not meet its payroll, she was among the small handful of private holders quietly approached for emergency lending. She lent. That loan eventually made the papers. The earlier loans did not, but the interest on the older loans came in by Clark, in person, quarterly, on quiet mornings. The check on the desk in Manhattan on the morning of January 7, 1907 was one of those. She was that morning washing 2 stockings in a basin of water that had not warmed. There is also a story about her son. His name was Edward Howland Robinson Green, but everyone called him Ned. He was born in 1868. As a child, he was lively, big-framed, charming like his father. In 1880 or thereabouts, biographers disagree on the date, on the cause, and on what came next. Ned hurt his leg. The most repeated version of the story is this: the injury was a sledding accident, or a fall from a wagon, or a horse-related event, depending on the biographer. The injury was, in any case, not catastrophic at first. A torn knee, an infected joint, the kind of injury that 19th century medicine could often address. The version that became legend says that Hetty refused to pay for proper medical care, that she took the boy to charity hospitals under false names so the staff would not recognize her and charge her, that she negotiated, that she waited, that the infection settled in over years, that by the time the boy was a young man, the leg had to come off above the knee. The version some careful biographers prefer says the amputation did not happen until Ned was 33 in 1901, and that the medical record is unclear about whether the original childhood injury was even the cause. The literature is genuinely uncertain here. What is documented in either version is what Ned's leg cost him. He walked with a cork prosthesis for the rest of his life. He never married until after his mother died. He lived for decades in the same buildings as Hetty, in the same kind of cheap rooms, on the same kind of cold oatmeal. When Hetty died in July of 1916, Ned was 48 years old and worth, on paper, approximately $100 million. He spent the next 20 years doing what his mother had never allowed. He bought a yacht. He bought a private railway car. He commissioned a telescope. He married a former prostitute he had known for decades and treated her well. He gave large sums to Texas universities. He died in 1936, having spent perhaps a third of what his mother had left him. He never blamed her in public. He also never visited her grave. Brad Klontz has a way of phrasing this for clients who carry stories like Hetty's in their own bones. The script is correct. What he means is that the money script was, at the moment of its installation, an accurate response to the conditions of the room. A 6-year-old in New Bedford in 1840, reading financial pages aloud to her father, was correct to learn that the survival of property required her vigilance. A boy in Akron in 1974, watching his father sit at the table in his slippers, was correct to make himself a promise. A girl in Omaha in 1966, watching her mother bury coins in the crawlspace, was correct to learn what she learned. The scripts are not stupid. The scripts are not weak. The scripts are correct in the rooms where they were installed. What the program does not know is that the room has changed. The viewer in the chair at 61, with the retirement account funded and the pressure under the third button still there, is not running an irrational script. He is running a script that was correct in a kitchen in 1971 and has not been updated. And here is what carries inside Hetty's story that the version most people know does not carry. Hetty Green was not exceptional. She was extreme. The distinction matters. Exceptional implies a different species, a genius, a freak, a person who carried something the rest of us do not have. Extreme implies the same species, the same wiring, the same scripts, the same room, simply turned up. The boy from Akron, now 58, with $2 million in his retirement account and $400,000 in liquid savings, who would not buy the sailboat he had wanted for 30 years? Because what if the contracts cancelled? What if the income stopped? What if the table came back, was running the same machinery? The girl from Omaha, now 56, with her own 7 figures in the joint account, who kept a notebook beside the refrigerator in which she recorded the price of every can of soup, every gallon of milk, every quart of paint, was running the same machinery. Hetty Green, in 1907, watching a clerk write her a check for $1.5 million while she washed 2 stockings in a basin of unwarmed water, was running the same machinery, same wiring, different volume. You have been telling yourself for 40 years that you are a careful saver, a responsible person, a virtuous adult who learned from the mistakes of others, that the tightness in your chest is the cost of being smart in a world full of fools. It is not. The tightness in your chest is the volume knob on a machine that was installed in a kitchen whose address you cannot remember. The saver and the miser are not different people. They are the same person at different settings, and the setting has nothing to do with the bank balance. In 1979, in an office at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, two cognitive psychologists named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky published a paper in the journal Econometrica that broke the central assumption of economics. The paper was titled Prospect Theory. The central assumption it broke was this: economics had spent 200 years believing that human beings, when given a choice, would weigh a possible gain and a possible loss in roughly equal proportion. A dollar lost was a dollar lost. A dollar gained was a dollar gained. The arithmetic of decision was symmetric. Kahneman and Tversky put people in rooms and gave them choices. The arithmetic was not symmetric. A loss of $100 in the human nervous system lands at approximately twice the magnitude of a gain of $100. The pain of losing is, in raw neurological weight, about twice the pleasure of gaining. They called this loss aversion, 2-to-1. The ratio held across cultures, across income levels, across education. The body did not care what the spreadsheet said. This is the architecture under the boy from Akron refusing the sailboat. The $400,000 he might lose if the contracts canceled lives in his nervous system at twice the weight of the joy on the water he never let himself feel. The math is not a flaw in him. The math is the human factory setting. But Kahneman and Tversky studied young adults. In 2013, a research team at the University of Pennsylvania, led by Agnieszka Timula, extended the question. They put older adults, age 65 and above, in the same kinds of rooms. They ran the same kinds of choices. The asymmetry got worse. The exact slope is disputed in the literature. Some studies find loss aversion intensifying with age. Some find it stable. The literature is genuinely uncertain on the curve. But Timula's team found something concrete that is harder to argue with. Older adults, in their data, made financial choices so internally inconsistent that, by the team's modeling, they were giving up roughly 40% of the income their stated preferences would have earned them if those preferences had been applied consistently. 40%. Not because they were less intelligent than younger adults. Their cognitive measures were intact, because the volume knob had been turning, slowly, for 50 years. What 40% looks like in a life is the difference between the retirement you can fund and the retirement you actually allow yourself to live in. It is the trip you canceled 3 days out because what if? It is the trip you took but did not feel because the chest tightened every time the receipt arrived. The number is not abstract. The number is what the body forfeits to keep the script fed. You are statistically very likely sitting in a chair right now in which the script is louder than it was at 35. The chest is tighter. The decision is harder. The boat the body once would have considered, the body now refuses before the mouth has finished the sentence. Stay with that, because what comes next is the door. In the spring of 1944, in a labor camp inside the larger Auschwitz complex, a Viennese psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl stood in a line. He had lost by that point his wife, his parents, his brother, his manuscript, his profession, his country, the suit he had been wearing when he was taken, the shoes he had been wearing when his shoes were taken. He had lost everything a person can lose and still be biologically alive. The barracks where he slept held 12 men to a bunk built for 2. The straw was wet. The lice were continuous. The winter of 1944 to 1945 ran for weeks, well below freezing. The men around him were dying in the proportions that the camp arithmetic required. He noticed something in the line. The men were responding to identical conditions in non-identical ways. The same hunger, the same cold, the same hopelessness. One man would, that morning, give his last piece of bread to a younger man who was sicker. Another man would, that morning, steal the bread from a younger man who was sicker. The conditions were the same. The choice was not. Frankl wrote, when he was free again, a sentence that has been taped to the wall of more therapy offices than any other line of 20th century psychology. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. A common version of this idea, often misattributed to Frankl himself, says that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. Stephen Covey wrote that version. The Viktor Frankl Institute has, on more than one occasion, gently clarified that Frankl never wrote it that way. What Frankl wrote, what survived the camp on the back of a stolen scrap of paper and was rewritten in 9 days after liberation, was something different in tone. He did not say there is a space. He said there is a freedom. The last one. The one underneath the bread, underneath the cold, underneath the conditions, underneath the script. The conditions of the camp could not touch it. The conditions of the boys' table in 1974 could not touch it. The conditions of the girls' basement in 1966 could not touch it. The conditions of a kitchen on Locust Street and a crawl space in Omaha and a fourth-floor walk-up in Hoboken could not, in any of those rooms, reach the place Frankl meant. The script is correct. The volume is loud. The freedom is also there, underneath. You are not asked, by anyone serious, to silence the volume knob. You are asked to know that the knob exists. That is the entire move. Paul wrote a letter, after the one to Timothy, to a community in Rome. The community he was writing to was not made up of senators. They were freedmen, slaves, the children of slaves, foreigners, the poor of the city. Their legal inheritance, under Roman law, was approximately nothing. Paul made a claim in that letter about inheritance that has, like 1 Timothy 6:10, been mostly misread for 2,000 years. He wrote that those who recognize themselves as children recognize themselves also as heirs. The modern reader hears heir and immediately reaches for the wrong toolkit: a bank account, a property deed, a manifesto in which the universe will hand over what was promised if the frequency is held correctly. That is not what the sentence says. The Greek word translated as heir is kleronomos. It means, in the legal language of the period, the one who recognizes a relationship that already exists. The heir does not earn the inheritance. The heir does not manifest the inheritance. The heir does not vibrate at the correct level to receive the inheritance. The heir notices that the relationship has been there all along and acts in accordance with what is already true. Paul's claim, to a room full of people with no legal standing, was that the inheritance was not the silver in the temple. The inheritance was the recognition that they were not, and had never been, the script. The script is in the room with you. It is not you. That recognition, in Frankl's language, is the freedom. In Klontz's language, it is the moment the program becomes visible to the person running it. In Paul's language, it is the moment the child sees that the inheritance was never about acquiring something. It was about recognizing what was, all along, given. You are not a careful saver who happens to have anxiety. You are a person carrying a script that was correct in a kitchen in 1971, and you have, beneath the script, the last freedom Frankl named, the one that survives the volume. The body in the chair, at 61, with the third button and the spreadsheet and the chest, has not lost a thing. The body has just been told what the noise is. One thing before this video closes. If something in the last 40 minutes has landed in your body, and not just in your head, if a kitchen has come back to you that you had not thought about in decades, if the version of you who walked into this video has gotten older and quieter than the version who clicked, subscribe. Not for the channel. For the next room. The script is layered, 50 to 200 deep, and the kitchen in 1971 is one of many. The next video walks into a different one. The bell is the recognition that this is going to be a longer conversation than a sailboat. And before the video closes, one more thing. The Topeka couple drove home in separate cars that Tuesday afternoon. They turned on the kitchen lights at the same time, 3 blocks apart, in the same town. What happened in those 2 kitchens is where this video ends. The session in Topeka ended at 4:45 in the afternoon. Klontz walked them to the door. He did not say much. He had learned by then that the room had to hold what had happened without him decorating it. He said, "Drive home separately." He said, "Do not talk in the car." He said, "I will see you both on Thursday." They drove home separately. The husband took the long way. He passed the high school where their daughter had played soccer. He passed the small park where he had taught both children to ride bikes. He passed the diner where in 1991 he had told his wife he wanted to leave his job. He had not left. The whole way home, he was sitting at a yellow linoleum table in 1974, watching his father not eat the eggs. The wife took the direct route. She drove the speed limit. She kept her hands at 10 and 2. She stopped at the supermarket on the way back and bought a single quart of milk. The notebook was in her purse. She did not open it. In the parking lot, she sat in the car for 11 minutes with the engine off. She was watching her mother, in a basement in Omaha in 1966, pat the dirt smooth over a Folgers can. They arrived home 3 blocks apart. They turned the kitchen lights on at the same time, almost to the second. Without knowing the other one had done the same. He stood at his kitchen sink. He looked at his hands. They were not shaking. They had not shaken since 1974. She stood at her kitchen counter. She opened the notebook. She did not write anything in it. She closed it again. They went to bed in the same house, 2 adults in their late 50s, in a room with 7 figures sleeping under them in a bank. They did not speak about the session. They lay in the dark side by side, and the script slept too. For the first night either of them could remember. Across the river, 80-some years earlier, the same machinery was running at a different volume. Hetty Green, in the 4th floor walk-up on Washington Street in Hoboken, January 7, 1907, took the stockings off the radiator. They were dry. She folded them. She put the basin away. She walked to the small wooden desk by the window and signed her name on a ledger she kept for the day's interest receipts. The check from the city of New York sat on a desk in Manhattan, 12 miles east. She would never spend most of it. She would lend most of it back out, at terms she set, to other cities, other railroads, other churches that needed bridge financing for a steeple. The money would move through her hands and not stop. The closed hand Paul had named in Ephesus was, in her case, fused to the bone. The script that had been installed in a Quaker household in New Bedford in 1840, that had been confirmed in a Manhattan courtroom in 1868, that had been confirmed again in the lobby of John J. Cisco and Son in 1885, did not turn off because the property was safe. The property was safe. The script did not know. She died in July of 1916, on the day after the 4th of July, in a chair, with a small leather purse beside her containing approximately $28 in cash. Her son walked on a cork leg to the funeral. He inherited $100 million. He did not begin to spend it for 2 more years, because for the first 2 years after she died, the script that was hers was, briefly, also his. The volume can outlive the room. It can outlive the conditions. It can outlive the person who installed it. That is the news. The script does not turn off when the danger ends. The script does not turn off when the bank balance crosses the line you set for it at 34. The script does not turn off when the children are grown, when the mortgage is paid, when the diagnosis comes back benign. The script turns off when the person running it sees that it is running. That is the inheritance Paul named. That is the freedom Frankel named. That is the move Klontz spends his clinical hours making available to other people in other rooms. The boy from Akron, on the night of the session, lay in the dark next to the girl from Omaha, and neither of them slept right away, and neither of them said anything, and in the silence between them, for the first time in 31 years, the room was big enough for both of them, without the boy at the table, without the girl in the basement, just the 2 of them, aging, quiet, tired.